Hey, what's up, everybody? So a little bit of impromptu live. I was planning on. Uh, I thought I was going to be busy today, so I wasn't going to be able to do a video. But I wound up having some free time, and I thought it'd be fun to do a live and talk about the topic of today's video, which is um, let's see, what did I call it? I think I called it, "Are prices falling or are prices going down a good thing?" Um, I think that a lot of times, so I think we can take this question from um, two different avenues. One, you can look at it from like a market perspective of like, is it a good thing, or down periods or periods where prices go down and sort of anything a good thing because that downward pressure really kind of stabilizes, makes people sort of question more realistically, like how much do they actually enjoy this? How much do they actually really want to be here? Have maybe more realistic sense of, is collecting Pokemon cards or other TCGs or anything actually enjoyable? Were you more interested in just in sort of making money, less interested in actually holding the cards, more interested in making money and having a business? What kind of business can you sustainably have in the Pokemon space if your main interest is having a business and not being a collector? So I think and I'm not someone who's like the only people who should be in Pokemon or oh, I think my internet's having an issue. Hold on. Should be back now, hopefully. Um Guys, let me know if you can hear me and if everything's cool. Cameron says there was an announcement on the Discord. There will be. It sort of automatically does it. You guys can hear me now. Okay, cool. Yeah, I just had an internet issue for a second. Yeah, so I think first of all, um, but the quality is low. I think it should get better now. I switched the internet. Um, let's see. Um, I think the first thing is that can people can really lose sight of is like when the market goes down in price, it's really great for collectors, for people who, or for at least the collector side of you. Now, a lot of people are not just interested in collecting, they're also interested in selling and having a business. They also want to build a collection. They also want their collection to go up in value. So people are not necessarily uniformly like, I just want to buy cheap cards and I don't care how valuable they ever are. I don't ever care about reselling them. Um, but when prices go down, people are able to buy the cards that they want, that they like at cheaper amounts. It sounds obvious, but it can be actually really lost in sort of the negativity and the over concern of the market. And that's a really positive, wonderful thing. It also allows more people to come into the hobby for the first time. There might be a lot of people who were priced out of certain childhood items in high grades or something that maybe would have looked at the market if they had come in 6, 7 months ago. And now that they look at the market, they're like, these prices don't seem as crazy or as outrageous. And maybe I want to be a part of this. Okay. Um, the other thing that I think is really great is how many more businesses we have in the space that set up a better framework for the hobby going forward. I mean, I loved going to Collecticon, and more in-person events, more in-person um, things where we can meet each other, where we can meet our friends and hang out and talk about cards and look at our cards and trade and buy and sell, the better. And I think that despite the prices of things coming down and some anxiety, around around the sort of broader, card market and um, broader sort of economic environment, with stocks and concerns about real estate and et cetera, et cetera. Um, I think that unless things get really bad there, I hopefully these businesses like Collecticon will remain somewhat profitable. People will still want to come to shows despite prices coming down. And in fact, as I was saying before, hopefully more people will want to go because they can actually find more reasonable deals. Maybe sellers will be more open to selling things at prices that the average person can afford, and that the hobby won't just be in a place where in order to get cards that anyone really wants, you're going to have to pay really huge amounts of money. I think some of sort of the top set cards being in the three, four, $500 range versus 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 opens up that area of the hobby to a bunch of new people. So, um, another thing that happens, right, that is that it pushes out people who probably weren't as connected to the hobby, weren't as connected to um, uh, people here, weren't didn't care as much about the success of the hobby, didn't care as much about the cards themselves. And those people are probably going to tend to be the people who are in that sort of camp, probably on average are going to be a little bit more have a higher potential for be a little bit more like scammy or scummy, because they're not planning on being here for a really long time. They don't really care about other people. They haven't really made an effort to like develop actual friendships with real human beings, and it was more about money or fame or self promotion or sort of their own ego growing. And because of that, they're not going to be as motivated uh, to treat each other well, and to take actions that are good for a long-term sort of healthy, enjoyable hobby. At the end of the day, prices are much less important, in my opinion, for this hobby to succeed. And in fact, prices, as I was saying before, high prices can actually push certain people out of the hobby or shrink the hobby or shrink areas of the hobby. Um, I think what's a lot more important is the way people treat each other. Are there trustworthy people in the hobby who are giving good information in the market space? Are there trustworthy, people who are fun and enjoyable and entertaining, who are like having really successful opening channels that are really entertaining and getting people interested in opening the cards? Are there things like Collecticons, CGC, PSA grading companies? Are there good auction platforms where people can sell cards to each other in a trustworthy way? That stuff is a lot more important for sustaining the health long term of the hobby. Prices and values will come if the hobby stays really enjoyable and fun to be in. Because the overall broader economy will rebound. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, right? We could enter a recession. It could be people are overly panicking and we might see a quicker recovery. But like, even if people don't have as much expendable income, and so of course it's going to affect a hobby like ours, and prices are going to come down. In the long run, it really doesn't matter as long as people continue to like this stuff, as I said before. And so, and just speaking, I know in this channel we deal with market stuff, and I don't really talk too much about my own personal opinions about like in my own sort of personal journey in the hobby. But like for me, I would gladly give away money or profits or whatever for the Pokemon hobby to be much bigger, broader, and for a lot more people of all ages and all income brackets to be able to like afford the items and engage in the hobby. And so I would much prefer there's a sort of balance, I think, to everything and a level to everything. And part of why I made my channel was because I was kind of afraid of the mania and pretty negative and upset about the mania. And I thought lots of like normal average people were going to be buying cards that they really couldn't afford and then getting burned on them. And that would not be good, at least in the short to maybe even medium term, would not be really good for the hobby. And I think it's so much of the toxicity and the mistrust and the negativity comes from that dynamic. It's part of why, like some of the drama channels and channels that are going to be calling people out and some of that stuff, and or me doing videos like that, like some of that stuff is definitely going to be valuable. Some of it is really just a symptom of the still sort of toxic environment of people losing a lot of money or care or losing sight of that they care more about the other people in the hobby and the cards are equally about that as they do their own wallets. These sort of dynamics as they sort of play themselves out over time, like these lowering of prices and this period is good for sort of airing a lot of that energy out, hopefully. And I would just encourage everyone to just continue to be kind, continue to be supportive of each other, be empathetic and compassionate and understanding. Try not to go down that route of overreacting negatively to anyone. Um, Clearly, everyone, you know, including myself and everyone here in this chat, uh, does things worthy of criticism or worthy of making fun of. But you know, doing that in good nature and jest, and not doing it in like viciousness or causing like real divides and negativity is important. Um, so yeah, so you know, just as Michael's saying, there's a lot of buying opportunities for collectors at the moment, and uh, and a lot of buying opportunities for people who I think have a how do I put it? Like new businesses, new LGSs, new people who are passionate. I think there are opportunities, new channels. There are opportunities to build now in a space that is probably being, because of the pressure and the negative pressure, the people who are probably going to be left are going to be the people who are sort of the most committed people, the people who care the most about other people and the cards themselves. And that's generally a good thing for any sort of hobby or any sort of market. So DK Souls, wish I had the buying power to take advantage of some of these opportunities right now. Yeah. So I want to touch on the first part. So like if you and this is not in response to you, DK. Um, but if you are someone out there who wishes they could sort of buy now or take advantage of it, um, what I really would stress is that to not have FOMO at either side. So fear of missing out on sort of like low prices, I think can be dangerous, and fear of missing out on sort of the mania high side prices can be, as we've seen and as we've talked about for a year, 2 years now on this channel, can be very dangerous. And so I really would stress people like find a way to enjoy this hobby. And part of enjoying this hobby is managing your spending habits, is managing your buying and selling habits. Don't give up. I think that one mistake people can make when they're feeling really down or anxious um, or really negative about price, or I've lost a lot of money, or people are just really mean and toxic and they're going after people that I like and that I care about. And, you know, I'm just done with all of this. Like we, what I would suggest is like, don't give up, you know, take breaks. You know, and for some people, you know, I mean, nothing is good advice for everyone, right? For some people, you should give up. There are things that it's worth in life just completely stopping because it's a significant addiction or significant problem. But for most things and most people in life, um, it's much more valuable. It's much more important to kind of weather and try to learn lessons from sort of negative emotions or negative feelings or worry or anxiety or negativity, rather than completely doing a 180 and leaving this hobby or leaving a relationship or leaving, you know, your job or whatever it is. Particularly if it's a new feeling, if it's or you really haven't spent a long enough time kind of analyzing or trying to understand why you're feeling that way, and you haven't done everything you can do to try and make it work, to try and make it work for you. And so I think that that's true about everything you do. And when you really care about something like this hobby or the market or whatever, you know, people are going to have really strong ups and downs, and you know, positive and negative feelings and feelings of burnout and all sorts of things. And I think just kind of staying consistent, disciplined, and coming back to like, why are you doing this? What do you enjoy about it? And you know, spending is as much time as you can, kind of engaging in the hobby in that sort of way. So I'll get off. Probably annoying to hear me like tell people what to do, or even talk about stuff like that. So I'll stop there. But and everyone's an individual, so again, one person's that could really help someone, and then another person that could not help. So it's part of why like giving broad general advice on the internet is not usually not that useful. Um, let's see, we got some questions here. Hooking up, so people going to be shell shocked by modern product not moving? Yeah, I think so. There's definitely this could be this is a thing now with certain sets, certain people not being able to move product. I'm not sure to like what extent this is happening for your more popular. Like, I'd be really interested to see places like Troll and Toad, places like DA Card World, larger sort of LGSs maybe around the country. Be interesting to see if their sales numbers were down, how their online sales were doing. Is it affecting those businesses? Is it more affecting sort of your small time average eBay seller who doesn't have as big of a customer base? But yeah, I think certainly if you had the mindset that this stuff was extremely liquid, that it was very much guaranteed to go up, and if you try to sell it and no one's willing to buy it, and you even lowered the price $10, $15 and still no one was willing to buy, whatever it was, like if we get into an environment like that, you're definitely going to have people who are surprised because they didn't know that was possible. I don't know if we're really there yet. I think things are still selling pretty well generally. I know on Facebook I am seeing some like fire selling situations, guys who seem to have, cases and cases, just trying to get rid of it as quickly as possible. It's not clear if that's because they, who knows what their specific situation is. Is that because they, that's really the most money they can possibly get for it? Probably not. Probably if they were a little more patient, they could get more money, but they may just need the money really quickly. They may think that the market's going to tank even further. They may have bought that stuff on credit and now they need to pay off their credit cards, and it didn't, they bought a bunch of modern product thinking it was going to continue to do it like Vivid Voltage does, which was, or some sort of double up in 6 months, when it didn't move at all. And they realized they were actually losing 10% on it, because if they sell it now, now that isn't the case for something like Brilliant Stars or Evolving Skies. If you had bought that, you could make a nice profit if you had been able to get that at distributor costs. So we'll see if the hobby moves more in that direction. At the end of the day, though, I think that it's important not to over panic, or analyzing the market's really important, but people, I think, take certain data points or certain sales or certain price points and then overgeneralize it as like, this is now the whole narrative for the whole hobby and the whole direction of the whole hobby, when in reality, like, that sale over there could have just been because they really needed the money and so they were willing to panic sell, or 20 to 30% of the market really needs to panic sell it. They're going to panic sell it in, which is going to short-term drive the price down. But once that's more, sold out, the rest of the market, larger stores, et cetera, who can hold it and be a little bit more patient and sort of sell one box at a time for a little bit of a higher amount, might stabilize that market. Who knows? Chemo Quex says, definitely saving up to pick up some cards that have been out of reach some time now. Yeah, so like, and that's really enjoyable to see prices come down on cards that I've always really wanted to own, on arts that were really amazing. And now I can actually afford them again, and I can save up and set a goal. And maybe as I'm saving, it'll keep coming down. That's a positive thing. That feels really good. That's exciting and wonderful that some people are able to experience that. I know when I was collecting, 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess is a better way to talk about it now, when prices really started moving up, part of me was happy because I could now sell and take some gains. And I had a theory that, I was buying this stuff in part to potentially sell one day, as an investment because I thought it was really undervalued and I like markets and investing in things. But I was also really sad that prices went up a bunch because I was having so much fun filling out my collection, and now I had to pay a lot more money for the same stuff that I was buying, 6 months ago, and that was frustrating and difficult. And obviously, there's a lot of toxicity and negativity around that, and we had, people being very upset at high prices, and part of that you just sort of have to adapt to whatever the market is. But it's nice when things come down to be able to look on the bright side of, yes, well, some of these cards that I was selling for a lot more before, which was nice, now luckily I can still sell. They're still fairly liquid, and I can take that money and buy some other cards that have equally gone down in price. And for someone like me who fundamentally is a collector and really is a private collector who just wants to build a private collection that I really enjoy, not for any sort of, social media thing. Um, uh, it's really nice just being able to buy stuff at a cheaper value. And, I'm glad that I sold so that I have some money to spend now. But even if you didn't sell, hopefully you have you can buy more now because your job, you have some sort of excess income or some amount of income you feel comfortable spending in Pokemon each month. And now that can get more cards than it, or higher value cards or whatever than it could a year ago. Jeremy Junket says, I feel like part of the problem is there's buying fatigue, so much to buy all the time. Yeah, I think part of what's good to think about is that for someone like me who's been in it for 6, 7 years, it's a little bit like more like I've been through plenty of cycles in personally, right? Where I was like more into buying and collecting versus more into not buying and collecting and more into just like looking at what I had. So I think for a lot of people who maybe have been here only a year and a half or 2 years or even less than that, I think most people have a certain amount of time where they're like kind of like super into looking at the market all the time and analyzing everything and are really super into it. And then you get to a point naturally where it's like, I need a little bit of a break from that. I'm a little burned out on that. And then usually you kind of come back to it. So I'm sure, Jeremy, with so many people starting at once or around the same time, you're probably going to get an interesting pattern where a decent percentage of those people who started around the Logan Paul time, having a sort of similar kind of movement away, or needing a break at around the same time, who knows, but, it's an interesting idea to think about. But I think a lot of those people, again, will come back, and it kind of goes to what I was saying before of like the don't give up thing or don't. And a better way to even say it is don't give up is don't catastrophize your feelings and don't catastrophize your decision making. Like, it's okay. Like, if you feel really down and really depressed, like their feelings, and, go for a run, go, eat something good, for you. Try to call or interact with someone who makes you feel good, who cares about you, who you feel connected to, right? Like, that is much better than going like down into those feelings and then making big decisions like, now I just hate Pokemon and everyone online is evil and all these people scammed me and every company's out to grab my money. Like, if you get too into that like toxic energy and toxic space that everyone's just out there to get you and everything's horrible, like probably a good moment to like step away and get some exercise and then come back with more of kind of like a moderate approach. And that's what I do, because I get irritated and frustrated and annoyed, and I experience. I'm emotional, and then I go play basketball. I do stuff away from Pokemon. I do other things, and that brings balance and perspective onto like how important this stuff really is to me personally. Personally, I feel like stuff is coming out too fast. I can't even name the last few Pokemon sets. By Wilderness, by UFO, by Wise, by Now or Never. It's a lot. Yeah, for sure, Jeremy. There's a lot. And I think part of that, right, as you're kind of saying, you're not only is Pokemon putting out a lot of sets, but you have companies like MetaZoo and Flesh and Blood, and lots of new card games, many of which I saw at Collecticon coming out, wanting the same sort of consumer base, the same people, and saying, buy our product. Ours is the rarest. Ours is the best. Doing kind of a hard salesman type of thing, and even just being sold to all the time and feeling pressured to buy or to sell or manipulate, feeling manipulated, or manipulated is too strong of a word probably, but feeling kind of coerced slightly or pushed into doing things, that can burn people out too. That sort of energy can be difficult to be around. You have to believe what I believe. You have to think how I think. You have to buy what I want to buy. That sort of attitude and energy. And this is a good point too, Ancient. Yeah, like Pokemon doesn't stop for anyone; it'll keep going. Yeah, so Pokemon, like, people will come and go, and we can phrase it in a positive way, right? Of like, just because some people are being really toxic in the community or whatever, you have those people, and then some people are being really, some people are just really burned out and they don't like it anymore and they don't enjoy it. It doesn't mean that the people who still enjoy it can't keep enjoying it, or your friendships you've made are still going to be here and still remain here even if you go away for a month, or these types of things. So and Pokemon the company as well, if you want to take it that way, will keep putting out modern sets. And with Jeremy, like, to go back to Jeremy's point, I mean, part of it could be like, I just skip a bunch of sets and Sword and Shield sets. Like, with the understanding that I'll be able to buy those things forever, probably. I mean, for 15 years, maybe 10, 15 years, with the amount of sets they're printing. Might be cheaper in 10 to 15 years than it is now. I know that might be surprising to some people to hear, but again, we've seen that pattern in other hobbies. So it might not be. It might be a lot more expensive. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But particularly when we're talking about like a day-to-day or week-to-week, FOMO, only your extremely rare items that there are only like a few copies of in the entire world are items that, like, would I ever suggest, like, you need to get now, right? Even if they go up in value, like, it's probably best to just wait till you really want it, and then you need to work a few more hours, buy a few less like takeout meals, and then you can get it. Breaking Silver said, modern wise, I'm just focusing on the good promo releases and good alt arts. Everything else can wait. Yeah, so like, that's a way to not burn out too, is to just sort of focus on, right now I'm just going to focus on like the cards that really pop out to me, stand out to me, and I'm just collecting what I enjoy, and just like the top 5% of things that I enjoy, because I know the other stuff that I enjoy will be there and be around. Yeah, and as Alex says, don't be in a rush, for sure. I can't even keep up with the newest sets right now. I don't even know what the newest one is. Lots of them. 80 Green Shiz. How you doing? Azui says, I want to invest in crypto, but my addiction to Pokemon cards stopped me. Yeah, well, it is a real thing, to feel a sort of addiction or compulsion to buying and continuing to buy for a variety of reasons. And that's, maybe go for a run, as I was saying before. I don't want to be given psychology advice to any individuals online who I've never met, obviously. But I think, speaking for me and my own personal experience, which may or may not relate at all to you or anyone else out there, for me, I was dealing with, there were a few periods where I was dealing with my own sort of, how best to put it, just a feeling. I mean, the pandemic really negatively affected me. And it wasn't in like extremely obvious ways. It was more of just like a general sort of like malaise, low mood, low energy. and shopping online and buying cards was a dopamine hit and a dopamine rush, and really broke up that sort of like, I'm not doing anything, I'm not really seeing friends, I'm not doing like exciting, engaging things anymore as much. I'm not like living and growing, and I'm not, you know, changing things and making progress in anything. So I'm not getting those like dopamine hits from that. So buying gave me that dopamine hit. And so that's where you just have to be, putting out the word addiction, which can be a very like medical term. Um, I think that's something more a lot of people can relate to. Just because you're experiencing that and have some of that and are looking for some of that in the buying, it doesn't mean you have it in any sort of significant addiction issue. Anyone out there, but it is something to be aware of, and trying to replace that right with things that are a bit more varied. Um, learn a new learn an instrument, start a new sport, join a new club, hang out with friends, play some board games, right? Like put some other things in your life so that you're not so dependent on this thing. And then also with this thing, like there can be just the danger of like spending a lot of money, which you shouldn't spend. And that's where that sort of dangerous mix, I think, happened with the mania, where I had a lot of people come to me because people know as a therapist. I had a lot of people privately message me things like, I've spent $50,000 that I don't have. I'm extremely depressed. I'm very addicted to this. Like, what should I do? Like, where do I go get help? And, I'm not, can't, I am a licensed therapist, but we don't do therapy like this. Therapy is a very personal relationship you develop with someone, in a one-on-one private thing. But I'm able to talk about things just for myself, which may or may not relate to other people. And so I would share sort of my struggles and sort of what I do to try and like lift my spirits, or what happens to work for me. Therapy is a lot more about a person's individual experiences, because we all buy, even if we're all looking for that dopamine hit on a psychodynamic psychological level, we're all very different based on our upbringing, our belief systems, our relationships with our parents, friends. So you're I'm going real off topic here, but you're sort of like online like self-help channels. They're going to be very like surface level. They're not really going to help you address your relationships with your parents, your relationships with your friends, like how you've been hurt in different areas of your life. That stuff you really need to work privately, one-on-one with someone. And I personally started to see a therapist this year, and I can tell you, for me, it's been really helpful. So to have that space to kind of talk about myself, a little bit of a side thing there. Uh, let's see. The current financial conundrum in America is, with things getting so much more expensive, just a job isn't enough. Investments are financial freedom, but also can be a great risk. Um, yeah, I mean, hopefully inflation will get under control and wages will go up in response to inflation over time. And hopefully everyone out there can find, obviously ways to meet their basic needs with their bills, and then also have some money to invest. And certainly investments, some more than others, but investments all carry some risk to them. But if you invest in sort of a diversified way over a long period of time with money that is in excess of what you really need, you're not leveraging yourself to do it. The implied odds are really in your favor, which is why it's smart to do that. HME says, if a card will give you true enjoyment and a smile, that's what matters. Definitely one of the things I love about the hobby. I mean, for me, there's so much that I like about the hobby, right? I like talking to people. I like doing market analysis spreadsheets and details and feeling like I understand and trying to predict what's going to happen in the market. I love that stuff. I love just looking at cards. I love looking at my binders. I like looking at my slabs. Like there's lots of ways that I personally get enjoyment and that other people can find enjoyment. Michael Berman says, thoughts on the Nintendo e-reader era? They feel very detached from the Watts era. Do you think we will see a time when they fall more in line together, not just on prices, but as era in the hobby? I mean, I think that they're probably where they will be. If I were to guess, most likely, I think that they're just because they have a different visually they're so different. I think that's why they're not. That's why they're really seen as very different. Maybe by a lot of people from Neo and earlier, which has sort of that original Wizards of the Coast like style setup on the card. When people panic sell, that's when the best times to buy the product are. Yeah. Yeah. Obviously there's the whole fallen knife thing, but can't say for some. I'm tired of seeing YouTubers promoting to invest in Modern. Literally the only things that have gone up are Evolving Skies and UPC. The rest here are in the red if you sell due to fees. Yeah, I think my only issue is just people just knowing what you're talking about, having the numbers and giving both sides. So any content that I don't feel like does that is going to irk me. But I have a pretty high expectation, I guess, and it's probably not that big of a deal, right? If someone says some stuff that isn't true or isn't very helpful, and of course, from time to time, I mean, I do so many lives, I do so many hours, like I'm going to say things that are wrong. I'm going to misquote numbers. I'm going to exaggerate things or say things that wasn't exactly true, even if I'm like trying to, so to give sort of the same benefit of the doubt. But obviously, if every video someone's saying something that's like false, and doesn't, it's annoying, but is what it is. Crystal Golem, hoping it drops. I hope you're able to get one. Michael says, we're in a downtime, but still up from 2019, so I wouldn't call it a complete crash. But if we see prices pre-2016, then I'd call it a crash and buy everything I could. Yeah, so we're still, most things are still going to be 3, 4, 5 times. We're not even close to 2019 prices. It's not even close. So outside of things like Hidden Fates has come all the way back, and some of your like Sun and Moon stuff hasn't gone up at all. Like your Rainbow Rares and different sorts of things, but stuff like all vintage WotC stuff, anything from sort of the XY era earlier, and then certain cards, even in the Sun and Moon, and have are 3, 4, 5 times higher still, and booster boxes too, sealed product as well. Hey man, I mean, if just to be completely honest, so another thing I wanted to talk about today is bias and influencer bias, and talk a little bit about my biases and how I try to combat them. So every single person has bias. We all know this. Every person has sort of their own internal, like selfish desires, selfish wants, right? If I had to say what I want to make a lot of money. I want my Patreon to grow and be very successful. I want people to have a really great time, really enjoy each other. I want a lot of friendships to be made. I want to build a channel and a community that helps a lot of other channels grow. I want Pokemon to get a lot bigger so that my collection becomes more valuable, but I don't want it to happen too fast that it prices me out of the things that I still want to collect and enjoy. So I have all these like internal wish is, right? For myself, for my own business growing, for other people that I care about in the hobby, for friends that I've made, for the overall market, for what that will do for me. But all of those things are, in some sense, sort of my bias in the sense that everything I say, I might be trying to will those things to happen. So, and this is true for all YouTubers out there. So YouTubers who talk about negativity all the time, they're doing it maybe to grow their own sort of channel, their own fame, because they feel like they're protecting people. Like everyone has a lens, and what's important is trying to, for everyone out there, to understand that and to try and navigate that reality. So you have to navigate both your own lens, your own bias, and then navigate other people's bias. And then you try and come up with some sort of like as objective as you possibly can conclusion. And those are the multiple voices in your head, right? Like I'm aware, right? I can be aware of all those biases. And then when I speak, I try to say things that negate that bring me back to that sort of middle objective point away from my biases. And a lot of people do that online. So let's give people credit, right? Because there are people out there who can be extremely critical, way overly critical and negative, and just be like, well, everyone's biased, so nobody's opinion matters, and nothing everyone says wrong, right? I mean, people have amazing wisdom to teach each other. I have 7 years of 4 to 5 hours of intense experience looking at all of these cards to give, right? Now, I also have my own biases that I bring to the market. I have things that I'm seeing incorrectly because of my own biases. I have my own selfish desires and things I want for myself, which could get in the way of me giving, advice or opinions that is extremely beneficial to people out there, right? Because I want the Pokemon market to succeed in the long run, maybe I'm going to say things that are more bullish because I want people to be here and enjoy it, and I want my values and my cards to go up. I may say things that are going to be that are not in your best interest as the viewer, who maybe doesn't have money yet in Pokemon, who's deciding, should I put money into this? Should I engage in this? This is true for all of your stock market channels, your people coming out. So this is true for people on the news. This is true for people who write articles and newspapers, all media, right? Now, because I'm aware of those things, I try and counteract them. So I try and give advice or opinions that do not help me, in those ways, because my priority is attempting on this channel, on this YouTube channel, is to say things that I think will be helpful and valuable for people out there, regardless of if it's going to be good or not for me, right? I attempt to do that. I think a lot of YouTube channels, a lot of people are constantly attempting to do that. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to succeed at all times, and we're probably going to get close to that line in certain areas. So I wanted to just talk about that because I think that it underlies so much of the negativity and toxicity behind everything, as people are aware of that, but it's not really articulated, and it's not articulated in a nuanced enough way that gets people to respect each other. And also, every single person in this chat and on this planet has the same bias and the same wants and beliefs that they bring to things. It's just different people do different things with that bias, and they're more self-aware of their own bias and they try to counteract it. Okay. And that's the difference in people. It's not like there are good people out there who somehow are, and then the bad people who like cheat and manipulate, it's a little bit of a oversimplification to make the world feel, more black and white than it is. So as always, like I always think compassion, understanding is the answer to those types of things. Trying not to get too upset with each other and too upset with each other's biases. But yeah, something I just wanted to bring up today. Let's see what else we got here. Jake, ever wonder why 1 to 5 years old modern sealed is performing better than vintage sealed the past year? In my opinion, vintage sealed collectors have experience selling. Modern sealed collectors mostly don't. So we'd have to like look at specific boxes and specific numbers. Like off the top of my head, If we think about like Evolution's booster box or something like that, because I mean, so many different booster boxes have done different things and have gone up or down different percentages, and we can try to figure out why. Like, why has Team Up gone up so much more than some other sets? Is it the popularity of the cards? Is it that it was short printed? Right? There's a unique sort of story, value fundamentals for each booster box, which could explain what happened. For me, I think the vintage booster box market, people way underestimated how many there were. And so, and influencers and box openers who were able to sell the packs and make a lot of money were doing a lot of the buying at some of those $35,000, like for a base set unlimited booster boxes. Now, that was also happening for a box like Evolutions. There were people in Germany, people don't know this, but there are people in Germany that I was hearing about who were paying $1,500 for a booster box of Evolutions, up to 1,800, and then selling it in their streams for like over 2,000, 2,200. So, buying up a lot of that product, selling it for huge amounts. Obviously, if you're taking an $1,800 Evolutions booster box and you're saying now it's 700 or whatever it is, 600, 650, 800, I'm not sure exactly where it is, that would be a 50% loss. But I think most realistically, at least in the US, the price of an Evolutions booster box really topped out at around maybe 1,200, but let's just say 1,000 roughly. And instead of the 3,500 for the base unlimited, because that was like one sale and it was kind of more similar to that 1,500, 2,000. Let's say that went to like 28,000, let's say 30,000. That booster box, Dan just bought one for like 11,000. That's like a 60% almost loss. Whereas Evolutions is down, I don't know, 40% maybe from the height. And again, it depends which numbers you take, can drastically skew the data. Now, 40 to 60%, certainly the Evolutions has not fallen down as much. I wouldn't say that's a dramatic difference, both pretty significant loss. And again, depends on the numbers that you take. And then different sets are going to do different things. I chose those two because they're both the same set or whatever, the same types of cards. So like why? And so your opinion is that vintage seal collectors have sold more, modern seal collectors don't. So one thing that could be interesting, that could be part of this, is that most vintage sellers were kept holding, waiting for the price to continue to go up. And then once it stopped going up and things went down and then things got really bad, it was life-changing money for a lot of people. And most of the people who was holding the vintage sealed, let's say, were people who've held it for a really long time. And so them selling it at 11,000, 12,000 now is still a ridiculously huge gain from the $500 they paid for the box or from 1,000. Whereas maybe a lot of the market, a lot of the people holding the modern booster boxes actually bought the boxes at some of these higher values. And because they've traded a lot more, because a lot more have sold and actually moved from one place to another versus the vintage, that, these are just theories, right? That that market, at least in the short term, is going to be more resistant to people selling because, well, I bought this box at 1,000. I don't want to sell it at 600, 700. I'm hoping it's going to come back up versus I bought this at 100. I think the market might $100 or $1,000 and I can still sell it for 11 and still take a huge profit. That still feels good. So it's sort of an emotionally driven decision. That could be one possibility. Again, it's hard to, we can come up with lots of narratives that are possibly true. If that one's true though, that would be, that probably won't last forever for modern. Like if things continue to stagnate, you will get people who will more and more give up. But for the vintage market too, the vintage seal boxes, like they could go down from there for sure, and things could get worse. And I mean, there's just a lot more of these boxes than people thought and people realized, to be honest. And people were buying them, as I said before, as a business to sort of break them and make a lot of money off of them, which was driving the prices up. I don't know how many like collectors were actually buying the boxes at the peak to keep sealed. And obviously those people really got crushed, at least in the short term. We'll see what happens in the long term, I think. Whereas I think a lot of that modern product was actually being bought by sealed collectors who were keeping it sealed and putting it away. He said, next comment is, modern seal collectors find it hard to sell and are willing to hold product more, but then how would that change over time if prices go up enough? Yeah, so kind of getting to the point I was making, probably. Um, Remember me asking how should I start selling? I have a big Pokemon collection, have good deals, and have sorry goals that are harder and harder to get to, as my pocket isn't that deep. Yeah, so as we were saying, earlier on, right? Hopefully, as prices come down, there are more things that you can start to afford if you like them, and you can budget for them. But definitely don't FOMO into things. Ooh, chat just jumped to the bottom here. Let's see. But no, I think the constant hyping of sets has led to a large decline because if every set I can't miss, I'm going to burn out. Yeah, I mean, if analysis and narratives are overly positive, then eventually it's going to, come back. The same thing with overly negative, it'll come back to some sort of middle point. Jake, you present yourself as someone who's fond of music, but you would never be comfortable spending 20 to 30K on an historical instrument, but you still invest in Pokemon. Why? Thanks for the live. Um, gosh. I mean, my first answer is going to be because I really have spent the last many years of my life studying and trying to understand this market and other TCG markets. And so I feel like large purchases I make in this market have more of a chance of retaining value, or I have less of a chance of getting completely screwed. Now that could end up being completely wrong because the whole market could tank. And if I had bought any musical instrument because it's a famous musician and that's going to be more historical and stand the time more, that could have been a better purchase than any of this. But so it's also because I love collecting Pokemon cards. It's just something that I do. It's something that I'm in the pattern of doing, in the routine of doing. I get a lot of pleasure and enjoyment from it. So why stop and do something else? And I only have so much money. Would I also could I get really into that and start doing that and really love it? I'm sure. I'm sure I could. But why change a good thing that's working and that's fun and that I really love and enjoy? I guess would be my response. Yeah. And I definitely would never spend 20 to 30,000 on something at this stage of my life. Um, unless I felt like I really understood the value of it and felt like I was getting a really reasonable deal and all that sort of thing. Rusty here today. Hey man, hope you're having a good day. TC Gaming says pacing is very important in collecting, especially for something like Pokemon, where even a single species can be overwhelming. Yeah, and I think you can take it. I mean, Rusty's been doing this a lot longer than me, and both collecting and sort of selling. And but I've been doing it for 7 years now. So as I said before, I have seen some ups and downs in myself in terms of my enjoyment over it. And pacing is absolutely key. And then finding real reliable friendships, real reliable communities, engagement, sellers, people to do business with, people to trade with, like all of that stuff, you'll look back in many years and feel really good about it. Like you want to look back, like ideally, you want to feel when you look back on a large period of time, you want to say, I did a lot of really cool things and I had a really enjoyable time. Ideally, we can't always control this in life, but ideally, we don't want to look back and say, I spent a lot of money that I shouldn't have on a bunch of junk that I didn't really want. I don't want that for any human being out there in the Pokemon world. I want people to look at their collection and be like, I'm really glad that I have this. I really have enjoyed this, and it has a lot of fond memories and experiences attached to it and tied to it. Um, this month I definitely overdid it with my car purchase. I'm taking a break from buying, I think, for a while. Yeah, often a good idea. I think crashing prices is subjective. For people on low budgets, it's great. As a whole, if prices are crashing and it has a negative effect on the long term on the hobby, then that's horrible. Yeah, I think that's actually in a lot of ways a really good, a better summary of sort of my thoughts and feelings versus like my attempt at a rambly opening to this video. But it's really like there feels like for me, if I could choose, right, my own bias or my own want, my own wish, there's some middle ground where people can afford things and enjoy things, and there's plenty of time for people to get in. And there's good amounts for everyone, but that overall the hobby gets bigger and more robust. And because of that, you will see rarer stuff likely go up in value as more people want that, and as more people are interested in it, and as the people who here have more income to spend on it because they get older and make more money in their careers or etc. At the end of the day, though, like even if the hobby shrinks a lot, uh, I, I mean, I don't think that I would stop collecting. I mean, there definitely be situations where I would certainly stop this channel if there just wasn't people interested in it, or it was like I'm talking to myself, or it gets real negative, or it's just stinks, it's not fun, it's not enjoyable. But I would have a really hard time imagining stop collecting and stop like hanging out with like the friends that I've made, or going to events and things like that. I mean, obviously we people get busy when I have kids and I have more responsibilities and other things. Like they're certainly like your hobbies and these types of things have to take somewhat of a backseat. But to completely stop, and certainly the market crashing or people not wanting this stuff will have no impact on, do I still want to collect it and buy it? Of course, it will impact it in the sense that I won't be paying nearly as high a prices, and I won't view these items as like investment potential. I won't believe that they're going to go up. And so I can't, factor that into equation when I'm buying things. Not in that scenario, I would only be buying things purely to keep them forever because I just wanted them. Let's see. Is now still the best time to be buying, like stated a few months back, or have you become more bearish for a longer downtrend than you originally predicted? Thanks in advance. So my video where I said like now is the best time to buy, it was now is the best time to buy in the past year and a half. And the point of that video was to show how when things start to go down, people become very bearish, when in reality, if you actually think about it logically, now is the best time to buy if you're thinking about it financially and you think the market's going to do well in the long run. So right now, if things have fallen another 2 months, it's the best time to buy. And it was even better than a couple of months ago for those items, technically speaking. But it was to illustrate a point that at the height, every YouTuber was coming out and saying buy, 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 buy. And then as soon all of those buy, 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 buy channels, as soon as the market went down, now said don't buy, don't buy, don't buy. And I was saying, actually, you've been telling people to buy the whole time. You now should be the time where you are screaming, because now your valuations, it's way, so the point is that people tend to value things based on current prices and by current trajectory, and not based on actual long-term um, beliefs or concepts of what a market will do. And that's very silly. So, but answering it as far as like, do I think buying a few months? So the things that I bought a few months ago, have not gone down in value from what I've seen. I'm flat on a lot of stuff. I'm buying in auctions and patiently. Um, I'm sure there are some items I could have got 3, 4, $5 cheaper, but nothing significant. Could they go down quite a bit more? Absolutely. For me, right, I sold a lot and I bought back only a fraction of the money that I sold at a much higher price. So for every person out there, everyone's in a different situation. So for me, it made sense and I still feel good about buying in those instances. If I was brand new to the hobby and hadn't made some profits or sold or wasn't rebuying at a lower amount, or I didn't really love this stuff, I wouldn't necessarily have been buying then or buying as much. Everyone's in a different financial position. Everyone has a different risk tolerance. So for me, I'm happy to buy good cards in this environment because I'm not in a risky position. If I was in a riskier position, I might not be buying anything. Depends how risky the position. So it's why we can't just, no YouTuber, no one person can, and it's why financial advisors work with people like individually. But do I think so? As I said, I guess to answer this question a little bit more, as I said, although I don't think the market's really fallen much from that, the majority of the market has really fallen that much from 3 months ago. And I think anyone who thinks that is actually not looking broadly at the market. You can find examples, but and as I said a month ago, the thing that concerned me was not so much the falling prices; it was the amount that there was a lot less sold. And that concerned me because we could see next month or the month after that, like actual deep falls in some things, because they're going to be people who get more impatient. And if their items are not being sold, they may lower their prices. And then you may see that. I just don't think we've seen that too broadly yet. We could see that. I'm not sure. I think if the broader economy recovers quicker than people think, I think the Pokemon market might stabilize pretty quick. But it's all just random speculation in the short term. No one can predict the movement in a very short term. I personally believe, though, right? We all have our beliefs. So I want to say it. I don't. Everything that we do is based on probability. Everything that you do as an investor, as a buyer, whatever, is based on probability. So I have beliefs that I put a certain percentage of probability on. And my beliefs on what the market is going to do next, I put a pretty low percentage of probability on because I don't feel like I have enough objective evidence. And I feel like most of my beliefs are emotional right now. And I don't put a lot of stock or weight on them. But my belief in being very engaged in the market 3 months ago was that we had reached a bottom around then. And I think that likely would have been correct if the broader economic market if the stock market hadn't then at that point fallen 30%, 40% some things, and the crypto market hadn't fallen like 66%, So because of that, I think that people just in general, like anyone spending money, I think people just spending money, people are a lot more tight. And then inflation, more, the huge inflation numbers, like I didn't expect those things. And those weren't part of like my prediction of sorts, at that time. Hopefully that makes sense. And as far as like the longer downtrend, I have no idea. I feel like I've been pretty consistent in sort of my risk analysis of cards, and that cards are very risky. That collectibles are very risky, and the best thing you can do is just stay super engaged, and you'll have a idea of kind of where we're going. I think there are a lot of possibilities. Christian Diaz says, Jake, what do you think will happen once PSA clears the backlog by the end of the summer? I have a feeling the sentiment will change regarding the availability of certain vintage cards. PSA clears. Oh. Let's see. Hold on, sorry. Jake, what do you think will happen once PSA clears the backlog by the end of the summer? I have a feeling the sentiment will change regarding the availability of certain vintage cards. Yeah, I think also 10 million views, excuse me. Another really good point is in this, which is trying the backlog not being back. So what I said and what I keep saying is that the only thing that we can really count on are if you go to Pokemetrics, which is a great place, and you're following the pop reports, you can track and see which sets and which cards and which grade is coming back the most. And those items that are coming back the most supply is going to hit the market from those. And those items are going to probably do worse than items where less supply, not in all cases, but in a lot of cases overall, that in cards where there's not a lot of supply. So Christian, we could take this question one of two ways, right? We could be surprised in a positive way. We could be surprised in a negative way, in the sense that, depending on your preference, I suppose, but we could be surprised that, and find out that there's a lot more of vintage cards graded in 10s and 9s suddenly than we expected. Or we could find out that, hey, it's really slowing down, particularly the 10s maybe, and maybe even the 9s start to slow down a little bit. And definitely, I think if that happens, the narrative around this stuff can switch. I don't think that, and I've been saying this for a long time, right now, I think it's shifting a little bit, but I think part of the reason why modern caught up to vintage in a lot of ways, and why some modern cards are selling for more than some, pretty high quality vintage cards, is because there are more of those vintage cards on the market currently than there are those modern cards, because a lot of the modern product hasn't been opened and a lot of the modern product hasn't been graded yet. So when you have 90% of the modern product needing to be graded, still, that's going to be graded probably in most of these population reports, like just sitting in people's binders and collections. And when you have, on the other side, when you have many, many years, and the reason is because, one, those cards are newer, those cards are still sitting in packs, not even opened. And then the third reason is that because PSA prices have been so high, there's no incentive, or there's very little incentive for most cards to be graded. And even $300-$400 cards, a lot of people won't send it in for $50. They'll still wait to try and get it in the bulk and be patient. A lot more of those cards will be graded, or could be graded theoretically, and push down the prices on those. Whereas your vintage washi, like 9s and 10s, your gold stars, your EXs, that stuff, because of the higher price point for a much longer period of time, and the fact that PSA used to be $7.50 a card, $7 a card, $8 a card back then, a lot of that stuff, there was incentive to grade it back then, even at some of the lower prices for that stuff. So it's just really understanding that is going to help you get some sort of sense of where the supply is going to go. Now, demand is a different thing, but I do think that vintage WotC is not at all rare now, and it's probably less rare. There's probably more of it out there in a lot of cases than modern cards, but that is just the scarcity. That's just scarcity. It's not actual rarity. I use the word rarity. It's just scarcity. It's because those cards have yet to be graded. Those cards have yet to be opened from packs on the modern side. I'll repeat that one more time. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense to people. FOMO, we're very far from FOMO right now, but FOMO, there was a little bit of FOMO on gold stars. There's a little bit FOMO on trophies, which is why we saw, I think, some record prices for some stuff. But FOMO on WotC, hollows, there's barely any. Maybe on some 10, I think on some unlimited 10s there's been. I think it's part of why we've seen some unlimited 10 high prices. Some 10 first edition prices maybe, although I feel like I've seen almost no 10 first editions come up for sale, which has been interesting. Very, very few. If I had to venture a guess, I mean, it's such a hard thing to follow the entire market. I've personally seen maybe 10 to 15, over the last few months, which is, I mean, we were seeing 10 to 15 a day for a while, so, I mean, it's way less, right? But when those become rarer, people's attitude towards them changes. People are like, wow, that's an item that rarely comes up. I haven't seen that item come up in 6 months. I need to complete my set. I'm going to overpay for it. It's not really overpaying, but I'm going to pay higher than last sold because I really wanted to complete my set as a collector. When you start getting back into that, if that ever comes back, which it probably will, unless the Pokemon hobby goes in some sort of long-term decline, that's where you'd see movement on that up. That won't happen for an extremely long time on modern slabs, if ever. It could, given a long enough time horizon. I love these philosophical talks. I appreciate that. I feel like I was like rambling and being annoying, but I appreciate that answering me. That makes me feel a little better. I don't really like talking about like my personal like what I how I think people should live stuff because it's pretty annoying and it's not applicable to every person because everyone's different, you know. But with my friends, I love talking about that stuff because it's in an environment where it's like we want to learn about each other and hear about each other. But in a place like this where it's one sided and I'm just talking to a bunch of people, it's yeah, feels guru-y. How do you feel about undervalued expedition slabs? So you kind of answered your question in the thing by saying that they're undervalued. So you feel like they're undervalued. I'm just giving you a little bit of our time. Undervalued expedition slabs, hollows during this time for long term holds. I personally really like expedition. Some of the low pop ones though are selling for humongous amounts of money. I mean, I'm hearing still $10,000 plus offers, $15,000 plus offers for things. So um, I don't know how those will do in the long run. I don't know how those low pop cards will do in the long run. I'm a little bit worried about what people are willing to pay for low pops. I kind of feel like all of them might be low pop given enough time, and so it might be better to, you know, like if they're only 60 to 70 PSA 10s and you have like 4 or 5 generations of Pokemon collectors who are actually super into it, and you have lots and lots of like, and Pokemon really becomes integrated into like the sports card collecting world, which becomes a lot bigger. Like if things go exactly the right way, which is a big what if, 100 in the entire world of something in PSA 10 versus 15 or 20. I don't think the thing that has 15 or 20 should be worth 15,000. And the thing that has an 100, which has an equally good Pokemon, it should only be worth like $100 or $300 or whatever it is. So that's how I would value those things. But some food for thought. It's why I, sold some. What do you think of PokeRev opening 914 packs to complete Pokemon Go set English? I didn't see it. That sounds fun. I don't know. I mean, I like PokeRev's openings and I like his channel, I should say that I really like what it does for Pokemon even more than anything else. I like that he brings more people into the hobby, that he introduces people in the hobby. His channel and other channels like him, like sometimes, like people, particularly I think Leonhardt gets criticism that I see for his sort of personality or the way that he portrays himself on videos. I have a family friend who knows him and says he's like a wonderful guy. And also like, I just, from anyone who's like met him, just says he's a great guy. So I have a little bit of a hard time believing that he's not a good guy, or whatever, or it's very fake or he's got some sort of like bad intentions. I think a lot of that's just people just like liking to hate people who are successful in a way that they can't do or won't do. They don't like people who are willing to kind of put a little bit of that like upbeat kind of fake positive persona online, which I get to a certain extent, but like some of the hate's just it's a little over the top, right? You don't need to watch it yourself. You don't have to hate on the guy. It's not really doing any damage, and a lot of people really enjoy it. And overall, it's good for the hobby because it brings a lot more people in who probably eventually filter into maybe the more like the less sort of like hype driven, content communities, all those types of things. Like I met enlisted Leaf in in real life, right? Anjo, and he was just like a super chill, cool guy who liked Pokemon, was really nice, hung out with him at Rusty's, looked at cool stuff. He was actually interested. It wasn't just like he was interested in it to like make a cool video. He's also interested in it to make a cool video. He's a businessman for sure, but like he, which is understandable, but like he also, he's nice. He's a real person. I thought he was very, very nice, interesting guy. So I guess, to go back to PokeRef here, I bring all of that up because I guess my feeling about these guys, as long as I don't feel like they're, do I feel like they could have during the Mania been a little bit more, Be careful of the FOMO, absolutely, particularly early on. Particularly PokeRev, I've been critical of because PokeRev was actually doing like financial videos. But PokeRev might have just truly believed. I don't know him personally. I've never actually spoken to him. PokeRev may have truly just believed that the market was going to continue to go up. And, but there are just a few times, I didn't like that he was selling packs directly to people who he was like telling people that the market was going to go up and kind of like ramping people up in excitement. But now PokeRev's just a good for the hobby. And we're past that period. PokeRev, we're all human beings. Like, he might have viewed that as a mistake looking back. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he thinks I'm being overly negative and critical and unfair. And that he might be right. That might be reasonable. But it's ridiculous. Like his channel, his growth, his success is good for the overall hobby. Obviously, it's very good for him personally, but it's also good for the overall hobby. And he's someone who treats people really well. And when you have someone who treats people really well, and that's a really huge deal. Like he doesn't crap on people. He doesn't use his sort of like power or position to put down other channels or put down other content creators or whatever. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal because someone in his position could be the type of person who does that. So you have to have, I think sometimes we don't give people enough credit for what they've done. And obviously he's made himself a lot of money, of course, and he's done his business for himself and his family. And that's phenomenal. I'm happy that he's successful and that his family's successful. He's posted pictures of his wife and his kids. They look like lovely, and I genuinely, I've never met these people, but like, I'm happy for them. It's wonderful to see people succeed and in something that they enjoy. Right. And I do think that through his hard work, he's also helped grow in the hobby. And I think this in general for people out there, something to reflect on, like all the content creators, whether you hate me, you hate him, you hate Leonhardt, you hate Rattle, you hate, whoever you hate, whoever you love to hate, taking a moment and realizing that like they've probably had a lot of positive impact. Even if some of the stuff you understandably are critical of. And I think that if we all treated each other that way a little bit more and we're a little bit more mature, like the hobby would be a much better place. And it's just something that we'll, continue to work on as we all get older and the hobby continues on. Let's see. Ancient Muse says, Jake, what do you think about the new peel off Ditto cards they're trying? I think they're cool. I'm not sure. All right. I like that they're trying something different. I like that it reminds me. So there were these like peel off cards in like DBZ Bandai that were kind of cool. I can't think of a lot of like peel off cards from other hobbies off the top of my head that I liked. I think it's kind of cool. I think it's a little bit random and a little weird, but I like it. And I like Ditto and I like the art and I like kind of the concept, I think, because it's Ditto and it can kind of like change and I don't know, be any Pokemon. I'm not really sure exactly what the thought behind it is, but it's fun when they try new stuff. I do think that the Pokemon Go set, from what I've seen, I have not opened it up myself for sure. And I have not seen enough of it or anything to really know this for sure, but it feels like it's a little bit lackluster in the sense that what does it have? Like, why isn't it more tied into like the Pokemon Go experience? Like, why is this a Pokemon Go set? I could be wrong about that. And because I haven't like studied the cards enough or engaged with the cards enough to really know. But it doesn't feel like obvious to me. And it didn't hit me when I saw the cards. It didn't hit me with like nostalgia of playing Pokemon Go in 2016. Nostalgia might be a strong word. It's only 4 years ago, but you guys know what I mean. Excuse me. Jake, 1998 Red Green Zapdos Hollow looks so familiar to the Zapdos from the new Pokemon Go set. What do you think? Oh, I didn't notice that. I really haven't seen the new Pokemon Go set much. I watched a tiny bit of PokeRev's video, um, but I'm interested in kind of getting a little bit more into that set maybe over the next few months. But that's cool. No, I didn't know that. I love that art. So I'm not someone I'm really good. My brain is pretty good at uh, markets and create and understanding how like systems work. I'm not the best at noticing things like that and details and so I really appreciate people who have an eye for those types of details and have an eye for art and can explain it to people like me. And I really appreciate that. So thank you for letting me know. I'll have to look for that. Random thought. What are your thoughts on the viability of complete graded sets? I have two complete sets for the Arceus movie. I want to keep one. Historically, how viable are full set sales? Depends on the set. Definitely, yeah. There's no one answer to it. I find that sets that have really big cards in them, if you sell them as a complete set, they can do pretty well. If you have sets that a lot of the cards are about the same value and there's no real big card value, oftentimes I find like if I'm selling that as a complete set, it goes for like 60% of the value. Just throwing out my own experiences, but nothing is uniform. Particularly if you throw something in an auction, it can go for any price on any given day. But definitely if you're selling a whole set, you're going to have people who they like buying the individual cards because they like the thrill of chasing individual cards and building it up over time. And then you also have people who like they already have some of the set, so they don't want to buy the whole set. So you've lost those two people. And then you also have people who can't afford to buy the entire set at once, but can only afford to buy one card. So you lose those people too. So now who you gain is people who might not want to do the work. And who are the people who might not want to do the work? On average, they might be people with kind of more money, less time. It's why like complete PSA 10 first edition sets or complete PSA 10 Chalice sets, like Logan Paul or someone like that, would probably rather just buy everything in one go than have to like contact a bunch of people and locate it all, But for every example I talked about, you can find a different example, so it's that's why with those questions, there isn't one answer. Jake, do you think unlimited Fossil Rocket and Jungle packs will get back down to $60 a pack? I was picking them up at that price before the boom. I really don't know the answer to that. If I had to guess, no. I don't think so. I think that's pretty cheap, but if they did get back to around $60, I wouldn't be stunned. Particularly like just, light packs, right, being around that price. I don't think heavy packs will be that price, but I think maybe light packs could. But it's just random speculation, right? We have no idea, Jay. At the end of the day, it's just how much do you all out there like this stuff? How much do you want to stay, and how many more people are like you? Jake, if you assume all booster packs from $19.99 now are going for $5 retail today, no FOMO, which 5 packs did you buy for pure enjoyment of packet opening and artwork? Well, if I could choose 5, I wouldn't necessarily just choose my favorite 5. I'd probably pick one from different generations. Let's say I would do let's do Neo Destiny, Skyridge, EX Team Rocket Returns, Plasma Storm, and let's do Team Up. Those are 5 good ones. There are probably so many. I mean, there's so many sets I really like. Those are some good ones. All right. Hey, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the question. Lucked Out Luke says, Jake, is Pokemon actually your favorite TCG? Interesting question. So, I mean, it definitely is. Like, if I had to just collect one forever, it definitely is my favorite TCG. But I think I go through periods where I'm more into other TCGs for like short periods, and then I'm moving on to different ones because I prefer variety rather than like just being in Pokemon. I really like being in a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, if I had to pick one, it would be Pokemon. And Pokemon was the only TCG I collected as a kid. So part of it too, Luke, is just my connection as a kid to this stuff, and to the video games, which I played so much when I was a kid. But like right now, I'm really into like Star Wars, and I'm definitely spending a lot more time in Star Wars than I am Pokemon, and I'm buying way more Star Wars than I am Pokemon. But it's not my favorite. At the moment, it's maybe my favorite, and that's not actually a TCG. It's because it's not actually a game. But another question by Luke. Do you consider yourself successful at the moment, or do you have a goal or a point where you would say, okay, I've made it? So I don't think in terms of black and white and absolutes, in case you guys, maybe some of you have noticed, I don't think there are arrival points in things. I don't think it makes there's much value in thinking in terms of that. I think it's more setting new goals, and are you sort of enjoying what you're doing, and what is your sort of moral ethical compass, and are you doing that actively sort of day to day as you're enjoying and engaging life. I also think life is just a great mystery, and we as human beings, are constantly within that mystery of trying to figure out what is the purpose. Is there a purpose? Is there no purpose? Do I believe there's a purpose? Do I not believe there's a purpose? Sort of your own personal belief system and opinion, and then the beliefs and systems of other people, and then how all of that collectively works together. I find it all fascinating. So yeah, I don't really think of like, it's not a word that I would ever use or ever feel. But I do feel a sense of, if by success we mean a sense of comfort or peace or pride or confidence or all those sorts of things. I feel all of those things to some extent at different periods, sometimes more than others. There's some moments and days where I feel more happy, comfortable, joyous even sometimes. And then there are times when I feel more confused, lost, down, depressed, so that's how I think of myself and how I think of other people. I really don't like, it feels very and when I say not useful, it just doesn't feel like it's actually describing the phenomenon of a human being when we describe a human being as successful. That's not, as a therapist and as a human being myself, therapist working with lots and lots of people in their internal lives, and as a human being myself, it's not been, I don't really think that resonates with the human experience. Even though in this country and on YouTube, people talk about how to be successful, 10 steps to make you successful. Now, if we just define success as like reaching a very specific goal, and you were successful in reaching that goal, that can have value or make sense. So again, a lot of this stuff is semantics, right? And how we view it. So in that sense, if I define a measurable goal and then I reach that measurable goal, I was objectively successful in reaching that goal, even if I don't feel good about it, or emotionally, I don't feel successful about it. Chris says, don't make me respect people I don't like. I'm not ready to be mature. John Doe, Pokeras. Yeah. And the truth is, like, we're all not going to like people. There's going to be lots of people who don't like me. Right. Like, but it is a sign of maturity when you don't like to be able to separate and understand why you don't like someone, and still be able to see their good qualities and sort of appreciate them for who they are, what they bring, to your life or to other people's lives. Right. John Doe, Pokeras' best friend from Cool Trainer Ryan channel got Rev into collecting sealed early on. He talked investing, but Rev has dialed in his channel now. He's the Pokemon man, hype man. The Pokemon hype man. I mean, I think Rev's mainly, I think he's an entertainment opening channel, and has it very streamlined. And I think it brings a lot of people a lot of enjoyment. Oh, I made it to the bottom of the chat. That has not happened in many a video. I am glad that I managed to do that. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to ask them. I rambled in the beginning of the video for people who weren't here, sort of the answer to today's video, or the answer to the title of today's video. I really just want like I really want people to have a good time and to not freak out about the money too much and to just be friends and enjoy themselves at the end of the day. And I know this is a market channel, and because of that, we talk about the market, but that's what I care most about. I just don't think we need a channel telling people to do that. So, but whatever. Hipster says, Jake, there's a dead card game I believe you'd enjoy called Jihad. Not sure how to say it, and then changed to Vampire: The Internal Struggle. The history behind the game is interesting, along with limited print. I will check it out. I've never heard of it. I've never heard of it. Oh, I should pin it. Yeah, never heard of that one. Pokemon Go at launch was such a fun time. Everyone of all ages was out and about in town trying to catch them all. It was. Yeah, I went out with my one of my best friends from college, who I was rooming with at the time. And I met my girlfriend not too long after that. And then we went out and played together. She tolerated it. It's not her thing, but she did it for me. See, I just noticed that PokeRev's got more than 300K new subscribers in just the last 3 months. Wow, that's amazing. And is about to hit 1 million subs. Think about that. I've never seen channel rise so quick. Yeah. So, I mean, it's also amazing that he's done that in a time when I think views have been pretty down and, you know, for most channels. So he's clearly doing something that, you know, works very well on YouTube and is very popular in terms of getting more subscribers and people engaging and watching the content. Shop PCG says, any insights on how you break up and sell collections that you buy? What do you aim to keep and what to sell? Yeah, again, you know, it's like with these questions, like they're great questions, but if you and I sat down, we could have like an hour conversation. Where we could I could go over like, here, I bought these 10 cards, and this is exactly why I bought these 10 cards. This is why I'm going to sell these 3. This is exactly why I'm going to sell these 4. I don't do that, and I don't make that type of content because I don't like giving away everything in that type of detail, and I don't like the way that makes that might affect or impact the market too directly. I go back and forth on stuff like that, but I know that it would be like much better content than the content I'm making now, and would probably be even better at like teaching people the thought process. All right, let's see how I can answer this. So any instance you break up and sell collections that you buy. So there's so many factors. So when I buy a collection right now, let's take right now. Well, you know, maybe we should pull up eBay and look at some actual real examples, and I should do another eBay video soon, because maybe that's the best way is to go through eBay things. All right. So I'll take a look at a collection, and depending on, to start, I'm trying to figure out how much I want to pay for this, right? That's the first thing. I know you're not exactly asking that, but the first thing I'm trying to decide is what I want to pay for it. Generally speaking, the more liquid the items are, the more I feel like I'll be able to flip them immediately, or the more upside potential I think the items have, the higher percentage that I'm willing to pay of whatever market value is currently. Okay. So hopefully that concept makes sense to people. You can go to any channel like Dan, I'm sure Mason has done that a number of times and explained that as a buyer seller. Like that's going to be the, you know, Danny Phantom, right? So that should be clear. Once I do that, once I pick that, so a lot of analysis has gone into that, and a lot of expertise and skill has gone into that to try to figure out which cards are going to be liquid and then how much am I actually going to be able to get for them in what time frame, and then where do I think these will go in the future? Which ones do I want to hold and keep? Which ones do I think are going to be better investments or better speculative plays? Right, that is the skill, if you have any, if it exists, right, or it's just all luck and randomness. I definitely don't believe that at all. But it can be. You can think things are luck that are actually, or you can think things are a skill that are actually luck, but whatever. But yeah, so that's the skill and experience in it. Once you've done that, you're going to take a look at it and you're going to decide, okay, I want to keep depending on your current cash flow and depending on, are you a business? Am I a collector who's looking to just build a big collection? Am I someone who I have $10,000 a month, let's just say theoretically, to spend on Pokemon, but I'm not using I'm not using this business to support myself. All right. If I'm not using this business to support myself, I don't actually have to take any money out of Pokemon. I can be at a net loss of $10,000 a month into Pokemon because my goal is just to build my collection. If I'm in that sort of scenario, I'm probably going to keep a lot more, right? If I have that type of money, particularly in a market like now when I think the market's kind of down or somewhat down, and $10,000 is going to go a pretty long way, particularly if I'm spending $10,000 a month and I can afford to spend $10,000 a month, I'm probably just spending $10,000 a month into the market and building a collection that I really want and love, and I'm probably not flipping or reselling anything. Okay, now let's take another scenario. Another scenario is, let's say $10,000, the same amount, but let's say I need to take out $20,000 a month. Maybe that's too aggressive. Let's say I need to take out $6,000 a month. All right. In profit in order to pay my rent, my bills, my car insurance, all my, everything that I have in my life. Okay. If I need to take out $6,000 a month to do all that stuff, then it completely changes. And I only have $10,000 to invest in new cards or inventory. Now I need to make huge, quick margin gains, and I need to keep it moving. So I want to get stuff that's going to be super liquid. I want to get a lot of it quickly and then sell it as quickly as possible, and then like rinse and repeat as quickly as possible. And I'm probably selling every single thing and keeping none of it. And then you have people in the middle who are going to be doing some of it to increase, because they need more liquidity because they don't have enough cash flow coming in from their job or somewhere else to continue to invest or buy bigger and bigger items. For myself, in the beginning, I was doing a hybrid where I would buy large collections. I would grade the good cards. I would sell the raw cards that didn't have as much value or weren't going to grade well, or the damaged cards. And then I would keep the 10s generally, and if I could, some of the 9s, and I would sell like some of the weaker 9s, some of the cards that I didn't need as much of the 9s, but I would keep like the better Pokemon 9s and like basically all the 10s. That's what I tried to do for many years, what I did do for many years. But any of those, it's why with these questions, like any of those answers could be the correct choice for you as an individual, depending on what your goal is. And really, it's just like a math problem that you're trying to figure out for yourself. And you need to know what your goal is, and then you need to do the math on how you get to that goal. Jarek says, I've been picking up first edition holo PSA 9s like jungle carts for $120 to $150 range for like Mr. Mime, Kang, etc. I feel like those are great deals. Yeah, I mean, they're certainly great deals to what they were. They're great cards. They could end up being really good deals. And when we say deals, it's like, what do we mean? Do we mean you're buying them like under current market, or do we mean like it's going to go up in the future, or because we feel like they should be worth more even now? It depends on sort of the semantics of what exactly we mean by that. But would it shock me if those cards in 5, 10, 15, 20 years were $400 or $500 cards? No, it wouldn't shock me. Do I think it's guaranteed? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Java Kuma, are there specific things or data points you need to see when exploring a new or dead TCG for possible future gains? Like what stood out about Middle Earth or Harry Potter that drove you to buy early? Yeah. So like, IP, the two biggest things I'm looking at are IP, popularity of IP, and then rarity. So in my opinion, the popularity of the IP is going to drive the demand, is the most important demand fundamental. And then the IP is going to be the most, the IP is the most important demand fundamental, and then rarity is going to be that supply side. Okay. Then I'm going to get into a much deeper dive of the market to see all the variations, to see how many sets were printed. Do they have a modern card game or some sort of modern collectible that's still popular? If I'm looking at a Star Wars IP or a Dragon Ball Z IP, why are they not into cards? Why is DBZ or Star Wars, like, theoretically, right, or actually more into like figures? Why are the figures really expensive? Why are comics really expensive in Marvel instead of the cards? Obviously, PMGs and things in Marvel now are very expensive, but those are the types of questions that I'd be interested in. I would want to be engaged in the community, and I'd want to be a wallflower. I'd want to go to channels like mine, if they existed, in these other areas, in these other hobbies, and I would want to be a wallflower, and I'd want to get a sense of why people liked what they liked, and then maybe I could find some value there that they didn't see from my perspective. But the first thing you want to do is learn and try to answer those questions. When something is really cheap, a good question is, why is it so cheap? Maybe there's a good reason why something is so cheap. Just because something's very rare doesn't mean that it will have any value. Now, another thing you want to look at is, like, why did other things go up in value? Like, why has Pokemon gone up in value so much? Trying to apply that to other markets. Part of my bullishness on Star Wars is based on what I saw happen in Marvel. Okay. My understanding of where that market came from, of how that market developed, is part of some of my bullishness in the Star Wars market developing over time. Either way, I love Star Wars cards and I'm having a blast. So I'm fine if they never go up at all. But that's where I would get that sort of trying to compare something that was successful to something that isn't successful yet, but has the same types of fundamentals. It's why I was really successful in the Pokemon market. It's why many years ago I was on forums saying, I cannot believe that these are all $25 to $50, these cards. I'm going to buy as many as I possibly can afford. I was putting like almost all my money into it at the time. For a few years at least, because I just was like, these are so cheap, and I felt like there's only a limited amount of time. I maybe had FOMO worked out, but maybe that was risky. But the prices were just so low, and the rarity was so good. It just was like, I was like, I need to buy. I had a really strong conviction, so I went against what I would normally do. I only do that when I have really strong conviction about something. So whatever. But I realized that because I saw what happened to comic books, and I saw what happened to sports cards, and I saw I was studying these other markets, and I was thinking, and I understood that pop culture collectibles, 30-year-olds often like to collect what they have when they were 10. These items were so huge. Pokemon's the largest IP in the world, et cetera, et cetera. And you can do that type of analysis. It's not exactly an exact science, very, very far from it, but you can do that type of analysis for anything. And then what's going to be the catalyst? Are they producing new shows, new video games? Are new influencers getting in the space? Are they starting to talk about it? Are people going to sell this stuff? Are influencers and big sellers going to start putting it in front of people? Does PSA grade it? Will PwC show it and sell it? Like, that's how these markets get established and get started. Okay. And then even within Pokemon, you can see how the Topson market, the Cardass market got started. You can see how, right, like those playing cards that had literally zero value, and then suddenly people started grading them, started showing them, they started selling, some influencers started talking about them, and then they suddenly became extremely valuable. You can apply that same type of thing to anything. Like Harry Potter, for example, like obviously it went up huge. It's come back down, quite a bit, but it's still up, a number of multiples from where it was initially, before the boom of everything. If influencers or channels, or they started a new Harry Potter game, and people are starting to grade the Harry Potter cards, and more people start to grade them, and more people start to add them into a broader collection. Also, in 5 to 10 years, more people will have completed or have a lot more Pokemon cards. They might get a little tired of Pokemon and start wanting to collect other types of cards too, if these areas are still very popular. So there might be room to grow in some of these other dead CCGs, TCGs, or some of these new TCGs. So it's all stuff you want to think about, but it's all risky, and obviously the smaller the IP, the more dead the thing is, the smaller amount of the fan base, the less influencers in it, the harder it's going to be for it to blow up. Is all the hype and hype channels really good for the hobby or more good for the people who already had big collections? I mean, I think it depends on your goals, right? Like, I mean, if your goals are just purely financial, it's only good for the people who have a lot of the cards already and then we're able to sell them as the hype. I think my goals are very clearly not just financial. I want to meet friends and go to collecticons and have really great moments with people. I want to open packs with other people. I want to not just collect and just be. I love collecting alone, and I'd be if everyone left, I would still do this. I wouldn't have a channel, but I would still collect privately because I enjoy that part too. But I'd be losing a lot of the enjoyment, and a lot of that enjoyment has been improved upon or grown because of, if we want to call them the hype channels, just big channels, right? Big successful channels. I think some of them, at times were hype channels. I think sometimes probably hype channel is really overused for just like big popular channels. And all of the negativity towards like open mouth thumbnails, like some of it's fair, but the people like, and it's funny to me, and you definitely making fun of people doing that's like fair game to some degree. But there's also like a weird element of like, you have an open mouth thumbnail, you can't say anything valuable, and you're horrible for the hobby. Like I've heard some people take it so extreme. So, and that's just a bunch of nonsense. You're ridiculous if you think that. Like somehow someone having an open mouth thumbnail means they're gonna like damage or ruin the hobby in some sort of significant way. Like bananas, right? Now, are they trying to get the audience, get a random person stumbling across their channel to be like, oh, facial expression that's really surprising. Oh, I want to see why they're, there's a reason why all of these channels, including Mr. Beast and everyone, has that. It's because your thumbnail, if you have that picture on your thumbnail, it gets people to have that emotional reaction and then they click the video to see what you're doing. That's why they do it, to get clicks. But that doesn't mean that the content is bad. It just means that they're playing the YouTube algorithm game and they're doing the things that they need to do in order to grow their channel. And then other channels are not doing that or not willing to do that. But it's a little bit extreme to hate on the people who are doing it and saying that because they do that, it means they're completely worthless or something like that. Like there's a middle ground take in there. um, Christian Diaz says, Jake should do a video about comparing modern versus vintage cars at the same price and give your opinion. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we can do some comparisons. I mean, I'm planning on doing some games on this channel once I can get my stuff together and invite people on, and those are the types of games that we can do. Some of these Prices Right, different types of games. I've been for like 3 months. I've been talking about it with people on how to try to, but I want to do it with like good production value, ideally. So we'll see. Because I just think it'll be fun, and I also want to like bring people from the audience, and I don't know. We're definitely going to do more games and more just like fun types of like still like hopefully like intellectually interesting and engaging and where we're learning things, but also in like game format. So it's not just pure this sort of talking. Yeah, for sure. I think for myself, I I like the upside on some of these really unestablished areas as compared to Pokemon, which is part of why I'm playing in them a bit. And I like the rarity. Like I bought it like a one of one today, right? Of an important character. So, I like that. I like that extreme rarity. And exactly, Nick, you need to get them out in front of people. That's definitely a huge part of it. Are there any finance YouTubers you like to watch? So I don't like, I don't watch like a lot of any financial YouTubers. I have watched like some of the big YouTubers. Let's see if I can, I've watched like a Graham Stephan video here and there. Meet Kevin. I've watched a video or two of his. There's a number of videos that and then I've watched probably like 100 other finance videos probably over the years, at least probably of like many different creators. Yeah. Um, a lot of it's fine. I do think it's really important to go back to that bias. Like these YouTubers make so much money off of their channel and they have so much like they create a ton of content. They always need to say things and they're always trying to get people to click. Just be careful with that because when they have so much financial incentive to get you to click and engage, like hopefully it's because they're selling you something that's really valuable to you, but they also in a lot of times are probably selling you like an emotional, like they're telling you what you want to hear. They're selling you sort of like an emotional, something that's going to like make you emotional. Um, I'm not calling out any specific YouTuber with that. It's just something to think about and be aware. Um, I think most people are aware of that, and I think both of those channels are like entertaining and also informative, and give some information and discussion points. It's just when if you ever view anyone as like a guru who like really deeply knows something way better than you, or uh, and again, people, I mean, lots of people know stuff deeper than every single person here, including myself, right? I mean, there are people who have deep knowledge in lots of things that actually exists. But just because they have deep knowledge, make sure that they also have their bias and they can actually sometimes they can combine that deep knowledge and that bias to sort of like sell you something or make them seem smarter or more capable than they actually are. It's complicated. So just be careful out there and try not to pay too much for anything and try not to overrate anyone, but also respect people who have knowledge and experience. As always, there's a middle ground in there. So I'm gonna do about 10 more minutes, guys. We have a lot more comments and questions now. I made it to the bottom of chat today. But now we've got a lot more. Let's see. Besides the big three graders, what do you think is the next best Pokemon grader? Not really sure. Maybe SGC right now would maybe be the one, in part because SGC is fairly big in the sports card world, and maybe. Did I ban Retro by mistake? I don't think so. No, he's talking. Retro, you're done. You've upset me for the last time. No, Retro's great. um, Yeah, I think so too, Nick. But I think that it's about your time horizon potentially, and it could be, and I think that like Pokemon really needs to keep not necessarily keep going up, it needs to stabilize and succeed and stay really strong. I do think a lot of these markets are tied. But yes, there's definitely a lot of animes, mangas, and big IPs like Star Wars, Marvel, DC. There's definitely opportunity in those, and opportunity in obviously new IPs that are trying, like MetaZoo, or new IPs that are people are trying to create and establish as popular. Hey Jake, what is the most fulfilling moment you've had in the hobby so far? I mean, I definitely can't just pick like one moment as the most fulfilling. I did really enjoy going to Rusty's, TCA Gaming's house with like Dan, who's obviously like, you know, the closest person, is the person I'm close with in the hobby, or one of the closest right at this point. So just being there with some people that I like know well, Nick, who, have gotten to know, a little bit, and have gotten to know better. We live not too far from each other, and also we drove like 16 hours each way or 15 hours each way, so we got to get to know each other, and we get along really well. I think it's just and then Zach Gem Mint, who's a great guy who, I feel like we became friends, or starting to become friends at Collecticon and talking online and other places. And then Ray, who wasn't there, but Ray is a great guy who I feel like we, started to become friends. Um, Collecticon in general, but going to Rusty's house and kind of seeing his collection, seeing the uncut sheets, and also Rusty's incredible generosity. Rusty was extremely generous with us, just in terms of just having us there and being with his really lovely family, wonderful wife, just super warm, generous people, giving people. And had us all over, made us a dinner. We were there for many hours, and then also gave us some free goodies, some cool Pokemon items to take with us, and then also gave us packs to open together. Just very generous. And I also got to open my first ever first edition WotC pack. Believe it or not, I'd never opened since I was a kid a WotC pack, Wizard of the Coast pack, despite all my collecting. I've only ever opened X and Y on. So I really that was a really cool experience, and I got to open a pack like that, which was awesome and fun. And I actually ended up pulling I pulled the Dark Charizard, the Holo First Edition Dark Charizard in one pack, which was insane from Team Rocket, which isn't the point of it, but it was cool. I mean, it was crazy to have a 1-of-1. My first and only ever first edition pack I opened, I hit the biggest chase card in the set. It was a cool experience. So I would say, and then opening, people got to see on Rusty's channel, got to see us hanging out for a little bit because Zach snuck, was filming a little bit of for a little bit of us opening something all together. But just that day and hanging up out there, it really makes me happy that I started this channel and happy that I started engaging with people and also helping promote other people's channels and being a part of a group of people who are trying to create stuff and because it gave me the opportunity to be invited to something like that or be included in something like that and be able to meet some people who, I've either looked up to from afar or have gotten the chance to meet personally and develop friendships and relationships with. And I encourage everyone to do that. I think everyone's super approachable. It's part of why I started my Patreon and my Discord. Rusty's coming in tomorrow, you can come in the Zoom, you can actually speak to him, you can meet him, you guys can see each other face to face, have a conversation. Things where we can introduce people, demystify the legends, because Rusty's a lovely guy, but he's a normal human being. like SM Pratt, I've never met him. I don't know him as a person. He's a human being, and he, when we demystify, Charlie, Gem Mint, Gary, some of these people who people have watched, for a number of years, Leonhardt, Pokerev, I think having those, being able to engage with them on a collector to collector, hobby to person to hobby, rather than through this format where it's I'm the only one talking, I'm the one controlling everything, that's sort of one of my goals. And I think that is a good, and is a way to really strengthen the hobby. So, and frankly, it pushes down sort of the guru-y, peeps. There's some people that are so above the rest of, I don't like that stuff. I really can't stand that stuff. Are you registered as an S corp in a similar way that allows you to purchase items to resell with no sales tax? I am, but I have multiple accounts, on eBay, for example. So I buy stuff for my personal collection, sometimes through one account, which is not tax exempt, and then I have a different account that I often use for items that I'm like intending to resell. That's how I'm handling it right now. For a long time, I wasn't actually Mertz collective Mertz, but it, or in the last year, for a year now, I think about a year, I've done that because I was buying at a rate that and really really selling then at a rate that as well that uh, it was the right thing to do. It became a significant amount of money enough that my sort of laziness or my irritation with like learning how that works and finding a CPA who I trust and it outweighed that. So I found someone through a family member that I trust and that I like, and I worked with them to kind of figure out what would be best for me and my like personal situation. Brindle says, Jake, do you have an idea of what eras were underprinted and can be undervalued post WotC? For example, I love a Diamond and Pearl and Charcoal Soul Silver, and trying to round out those sets, but I'm worried that they could drop too. Yeah, so definitely we think, Dan and I and many people, we think that that some of those sets were a lot of the lowest printed sets, but it's not just about rarity. It's also about demand. So I bought a 101 today in another hobby. And what a 101 for people who don't know what that means is that it's a parallel version of a card. So like in sports, for example, they'll have like a base card, which has a certain art, and then they'll have different colors of that card that are different parallels of that card. And what those parallels are is that one will be like 1 out of 99, one might be 1 out of 50, one might be 1 out of 25, 1 out of 10, and then you have a 1 out of 1, which means that it's only that one card. So you have that in the whole world, there's only that 1 of 1, parallel, whatever. And I bought that today, and that's much rarer than any. The only card that is as rare as that in the whole Pokemon hobby are some trophy cards that have like winners' faces on them, we could say, right? But just like those trophy cards that have winners' faces on them don't go for anything close to the Pikachu Illustrator. It's not just about rarity; it's also about demand, and it's about awareness, and it's about narrative and other things that go into it. So that's just what I would say. So there's no guarantee, but yes, they're very low printed, and so that really does help those eras. You need less demand in those eras to eat up the supply and to help prices stabilize and go up. Are you still working as a therapist full time? I feel like I've seen you around here more lately. Do you plan on ever moving to Pokemon full time? So I don't plan on ever moving to Pokemon full time, but actually recently I left my job and am going through a process now where I'm trying to figure out. I might start working for my cousin actually, who is a financial advisor, and I'm kind of interested in becoming a financial analyst for a while, analyzing like real estate market deals and stock deals, and maybe buying some companies and starting to buy and sell companies and be involved in real estate products as well as maybe like loan money. There's a lot of different things his business does, and I'm still sort of learning about it, but I find it interesting. I think I might enjoy that as a little bit of a break. And then maybe I will do like part-time private practice. I'm still a licensed therapist. I can still practice actively. I might do like a private practice. I was working really long hours, and I was even doing like all-nighters, and because I was working in like a hospital on call, and I was doing a lot of things for the past number of years that for me it was time to step away from and take a little bit of a break. So that's where I'm at, to be transparent with the audience. I don't know if I should tell everyone my life and exactly what's going on, but I tend to be a pretty open book, for better or worse. But I still love a very worthwhile career for me, and it's not something that I'm looking to step away from forever. Definitely near and dear to my heart, the experiences. So But yeah, you were right, Meritz. You've seen me do more certainly day live streams and just live streams in general, in part because at least this month, really, I've been um I'm no longer like working two jobs. I was like working like so many hours, and now I have a lot more time. Um, oh, you were asking someone else. Let's see. Speaking of financial YouTubers, have you listened to Dave Ramsey? What are your thoughts on his philosophies? I do. I'm familiar with Dave Ramsey. I have listened to some Dave Ramsey. I'm familiar with him. Um, my sense of Dave Ramsey is he sells products and courses and does content. His business is sort of like a content business and as well as like a course business based around like a very sort of like basic financial planning regarding, I think he uses like the debt snowball. That's his, right? Where it's like he helps people sort of pay off debt. And I think he goes from, and these things are taken not just from him, but from like lots of places, right? He's someone who probably is like, you should have a certain amount saved. First thing you should do is have a certain amount saved for some sort of emergency. Then you need to make sure that you're paying off all your like your basic needs. You need to budget and you need to make sure you're paying off your basic needs. Once you're paying off your basic needs, any money that you have left over, you should start paying off your credit. And I think he does like a credit snowball versus like a paying off the high. He doesn't pay off the highest interest rate first. He pays off the smallest credit card first. So you get some sort of like mental energy moving forward. Very anti credit cards, very anti leverage. I think unnecessarily so. But he sells a certain viewpoint, a certain way of thinking about finances, and a way that is much better. His way of doing things with hard work, you will be very successful. Um, Now, using some leverage, using some credit, using some of these things, you can be more successful, but you are taking on more risk. And for a lot of people, it's definitely not worth it, probably in the end. And with hard work, you can be extremely successful by just working a lot, getting high enough paying jobs, setting a low enough budget, and then just saving that money. And like probably he just has people like plow their money into like indexes and bonds, and that's it, is what I would imagine. And that's sort of his like empire. But his empire is built on a big part of it is his personality, his Christian, I believe, is like Christian faith and background. And he seems to, and I have no doubt that he's helped. I mean, his like if to spend $50 to have someone's kind of like hold your hand through that, like even if intellectually it's not a very difficult thing to hold your hand, like his sort of like emotional, spiritual, thing, and then just motivating you to stay on course, like has helped tons of people. It's why motivational gurus and people can be very valuable to a certain extent. They can also be scammers who don't give much value or are full of hot air and who are charging way too much for what they have. A lot of it has to do with like the price point, in my opinion, that they're charging. And it has to do with like having an accurate understanding of like how brilliant is this person? Why are they successful? And will that work for you? Because everyone also has their own areas of competency. And his approach is probably a little bit a little bit too much one size fits all. He's a little bit like a father who tells you what you should and shouldn't do. A little bit of that vibe. So those are my thoughts on him. But overall, a huge net positive. I mean, his basic principles and ideas about, and his conservatism is really positive when it comes to like investing in finance. To have some of that at least. I like this live stream better than when you use Zoom. The picture fits the full screen, and I like the highlighted comment you're talking about. Yeah, it's definitely better. For sure. It wasn't, because the CPA just like sent me the correct paperwork. Like if I had done it myself, I think I would have been a little bit confused about like what exactly the paperwork I should do, like which ones do I need to fill. But like they just sent me what I needed to do. I filled it out. I sent it back to them. They sent it in. Done. And then they sent me like the official paperwork. So I think it cost me maybe $300, $400 or something. All right, so I think we will end it there for today, guys. We'll slow down there. Really appreciate you all as always. Thank you for the great questions and for hanging out today. I know it's probably a bit rambly there at times, as always, but appreciate you guys sticking with me and just like all the continued support. I've had such a blast doing this through the ups and the downs and through the crazy times, and I'll continue to do it. And I do want to try to figure out other content we can do that's fun, and maybe do some of those games and other things. So we'll try to do some of that. Otherwise, I'll see a lot of you guys hopefully this Sunday. If you want to be involved in that, the link is below for my business. Otherwise, just happy to have you on the YouTube channel as always. You're always welcome here, whether you want to do the Patreon and Discord or not, for sure. So thank you all, and have a great rest of your weekend, and see some of you tomorrow. All right, take care.